everybody, and welcome to our Sunday Bhagavat Sravana program. We're so happy to see all of you here today on this hot, steamy New York July Sunday. Is anybody first time to Bhakti Center or first time to this program? Welcome. So glad to have you here, both of you. Welcome. Well, this is our Sunday program. I see Paris 2 coming in. Sorry to do a shout out with some family, please. Welcome. Come on in. Haribol, we're so happy to have you.
Thank you. Yes, I've got 2 of my niece's friend, my mom.
Wonderful. Welcome, everyone. Please, there's plenty of chairs and cushions, whatever is most comfortable for you. So the format of the program today will be, we just had a wonderful kirtan. Thank you, Sri Prahlad Prabhu, for leading us. Then we will have a class given by Sri Prahlad on Storefront Siddhanta, Prabhupada's first teachings. Incredible class. Can't wait to hear that.
The feast. He's going to serve.
Yeah, exactly.
All singing all day.
Of course. We'll have some arti for their lordships, and then we will have prasadam in the back, which is food that has been offered to their lordships, to our deities, and it will be vegan and delicious. So to share a brief introduction, I'm sure many of you know Sri Prahlad Prabhu. He's a wonderful community member and leader as one of the 3 co-directors of Bhakti Center today. He is a world-renowned kirtan artist and a lifelong practitioner of Bhakti Yoga. He was raised in ashrams in Australia and India, and he began singing kirtan as a child, and at just 12 years old, released an album through the eyes of a child. I don't know what you were doing when you were 12, but it might not be that, so very, very impressive. Since then, he's led kirtan across the world, and he spent nearly 2 decades traveling as a lead kirtan singer with his spiritual mentor, Ijajuma Swami. His heartfelt chanting continues to uplift and inspire spiritual seekers throughout the world, and we are very, very blessed to have him as such a engaged, regular preacher here at Bhakti Center. So please, 3 loud Haribols for Sri Prahlad Prabhu. Haribo! Haribo! Haribo!
Thank you very much. We are grateful, as always, to be here with you, and grateful that you joined us this Sunday morning. Yesterday was the 59th anniversary of the incorporation of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness here in New York City. This was the first temple that Prabhupada incorporated, so the founding of ISKCON. This wonderful society now with hundreds and hundreds of centers and temples and schools and restaurants and even hospitals and towns. It started here 59 years ago, just around the block. So we are at number 25, First Avenue, and just across the block, 26th, Second Avenue, Prabhupada incorporated the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So yesterday was the day that when Baba Bhakti asked me to speak, we discussed the topic, as we thought, how about we meditate or reflect on Prabhupada's establishing the International Society for Krishna Consciousness here in New York City 59 years ago. Just a note, next year, 60 years, will be a special time to reflect and to celebrate. And so I believe Johnny Tai and Yadunat and others at Matchless Gifts have a series of activities and events planned for that celebration.
Just next week.
And if you want to be involved, I'm sure you can reach out to them to be part of the all planning, and the next year Execution Bhakti Center will also be involved in those activities to celebrate 60 years of the founding of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. For today, I wanted to focus on Prabhupada's early teaching at 26th Avenue. It's a storefront. It looks like this. Even today, everyone has the t-shirt as well. Even today, it looks like this. In fact, great effort has been made to maintain that appearance as it was when Prabhupada was teaching at that location 59 years ago and beyond. And if you haven't visited 22nd Avenue recently, please do so, because Ramnath Maharaj has been guiding the devotees to create a Prabhupada museum, to create an environment that gives you the experience of being in the place where Prabhupada was teaching all those years ago. And so efforts have been made to get the paint colors the same, and the same decorations, and the same paintings on the walls, and different paraphernalia around the room, so that when you enter the space, emotionally, you have this connection with the past and a connection with Prabhupada, and you have a sense that Prabhupada is still there, still teaching, still sharing Krishna consciousness. So we encourage you to visit, and more efforts are being made to keep the facility open. There are programs that happen through the week. Wednesday evenings there's a Prabhupada meditation. On Saturdays there's a Bhagavad Gita discussion, kirtan class. On Sundays there's a Sangha group that meets and they discuss Prabhupada's teachings in Russian and Ukrainian. So there are activities through the week every day from 9, is it 9 or 9:30?
9 to 11:30.
From 9 till 11:30, Abhabhakti and Jnani Tai, they're there at 22nd Avenue. Gates open, doors open for visitors and pilgrims to go and be there with Prabhupada. And the word's out. I was there visiting this last Wednesday, the Wednesday before, and as I was there, people were coming into the storefront. So that's very exciting, very inspiring. Now, I want you to imagine you're there, 22nd Avenue, all those years ago, 1966. You have the opportunity to go into that space. What do you expect? What do you expect what do you hope for entering that space in 1966?
See Prabhupada.
You hope to see Prabhupada, right?
Yeah.
You hope to see him, you hope to hear him. Most of us in this room, aside from Satyaraj Prabhu, we didn't get to see Prabhupada, we didn't get to hear Prabhupada's voice directly in person. And so if we had the opportunity to go and sit before Prabhupada and hear him and learn from him, what a privilege that would be, what an opportunity that would be. Satsvarup Maharaj in the Lilamrita, he writes, Prabhupada lectured with exacting scholarship and deeply committed devotion. I remember years ago, Niranjan Maharaj was visiting us in Poland, and he was telling Niranjan Maharaj how he liked to listen to Prabhupada's lectures from 22nd Avenue, 1966. And he explained why. He said, Prabhupada has a small following. Some young American boys and girls, they're showing some interest in Krishna consciousness. They're not yet fully committed. They're not yet disciples, devotees. They're interested. And so Prabhupada is trying with all of his devotion and compassion and determination to share, to convey, to communicate these timeless teachings of Krishna consciousness with these interested young men and women in Buddhism. You can hear it in his voice. There is a compassion, there is a determination. He's taking time to explain, to engage and interact with these young people. And so if we had the opportunity to sit there, to be in that audience, to be one of those heads that you see in the image, what a privilege that would be. If you could go back in time and sit before Prabhupada, would you? I think most of us here will put our hands in the air. Yes, I would. What an opportunity that would be. I wouldn't miss it for anything. Well, I want to suggest this. Imagine if there was an English professor there listening to Prabhupada each night, recording every one of Prabhupada's words, transcribing them carefully, and then Prabhupada's just come from India, so his English is still quite accented, and his language, he's using idioms that don't quite sit right with the Western ear. So a little difficult to understand, but you have a professor sitting there, transcribing, editing, polishing, going back to Prabhupada to check in. Do I have this right? Did I understand this correctly? Is this what you want to say? How valuable would that be? Incredibly so, right? Yeah? You would want that person's notes. Please give me those notes that you're taking down. Please give me those transcriptions. So there was such a person, such a professor. His name was Hayagriva. Prabhupada engaged him as an editor. He told Hayagriva, edit for force and clarity. We want this Bhagavad Gita acceptable for publication. And grammatical precision is important. It must be acceptable to the academic community also. And since you have experience in that field, you know best how to put it nicely. Whenever there's some question about the meaning, you consult with me. So Prabhupada's instructions to Hayagriva, as he recounts in his book called The Hare Krishna Explosion, describing those early days. What a powerful title. Describing those early days, 1966. So Hayagriva, he did the service. Prabhupada guided him to take these notes, to transcribe, to edit, to polish. And they were published as 4 books. So what I want to do for you today, with you today, is to share with you these 4 books. I have a couple of them with me. I can pass them around. Just feel them. You could read a few lines more if you wish. 4 books. Rajavijja, the King of Knowledge, Beyond Birth and Death, The Perfection of Yoga, and On the Way to Krishna. Generally, we don't look at these books together. But if you look at them together, it becomes quite interesting and profound. Rajavidya, the King of Knowledge, introduces an epistemology. The epistemology of Vedic science is different than modern science. It's a descending process of receiving transcendental knowledge from Krishna, through Parampara, discipline succession, learning from a teacher. So it's not knowledge that we arrive at by ourselves, by our own empirical methods, It's knowledge that we receive through revelation. Truth is revealed to the sincere seeker, the sincere student. Beyond birth and death describes an ontology. Who are you? Who am I? What is this world? Where have we come from? This distinction between the self and the body, the soul, or spirit, and matter. And then there is a supreme soul. So for realizing our own identity, we, as spiritual beings, and thereby we can go beyond birth and death. The perfection of yoga is a process. This was a time when yoga was just becoming popular in the West. There were different yogi teachers coming across from India, becoming yogi gurus. And so this publication, The Perfection of Yoga, explains the yoga process and Bhakti Yoga as the culmination of all yogic practice. And then finally, On the Way to Krishna provides the objective or the goal. What is this all about? What is this for? Why practice yoga? Why is it important to understand who I am? Why is this knowledge significant? It culminates in Krishna consciousness. It culminates in an awakening of pure love for Krishna and entering into Krishna's eternal pastimes in relationship with Krishna. So that's the brief overview and the beauty of seeing these 4 books together as a group, and each with, and I think the important thing to say that I want to emphasize or communicate, each book is on topic. Prabhupada has many other books that have been created from his classes, and they vary in range in terms of what the topics are. Sense of self-realization, Krishna consciousness, the mentalist gift, they vary. They give lots of different nice, beautiful points about Krishna consciousness. These books stand out on their own. Aside from their all being based on Prabhupada's teaching in 1966, they are all focused towards a specific teaching. The epistemology, the understanding of the self, the science of reincarnation, the process of yoga, and finally developing a knowledge of Krishna and cultivating a relationship with Krishna and returning to Krishna. I love that title, On the Way to Krishna. So I want to go into each of these books in a little more detail with you, beginning with Raja Vidya. My hope is that you'll develop some attraction to go and explore these books yourself. So obviously, in the short time available, we cannot convey everything that these books have to tell us, but hopefully I can awaken within you an excitement, an enthusiasm, a desire. Let me go and rediscover these books, because you've probably read them already, many of you. Maybe you'll see them with fresh eyes. You'll see them in new light. You'll see them with this context. 26th Avenue. I had no idea these were Prabhupada's lectures from 26th Avenue. I agree, well, I could hear his voice there as well, at the introduction and the very end of the work as he gives some context. And then Bhagavad Gita. These are Prabhupada's teachings on the Bhagavad Gita. So Raja Vidya King of Knowledge, it's 8 chapters. And these are Prabhupada's lectures on chapter 8, 9, and 4 of the Bhagavad Gita. And then you might say, Sripala, why don't you say 4, 8, 9? No, that's actually the order in which they appear within the book. He's presenting you can see the title of the book, Raja Vidya Raja Guhya Pavitram Paramam Bhavam. Chapter 9, text 1 of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, this knowledge is the king. It's the king of knowledge. It is the purest knowledge. It is the greatest secret. It is the culmination of spiritual understanding. And so that lecture is the opening of this book, end of chapter 8, where Krishna is telling Arjuna it's important to get transcendental knowledge, and then beginning of chapter 9, where Krishna explains this knowledge as the king of education, and how it is joyful. It makes one joyful, and it transforms one as well. So chapters 1 and 2, based on chapters 8 and 9. And then what is the focus of this knowledge? It's Krishna. Krishna is the object of this knowledge, chapters 3 and 4. And then how do we get it? That's when we go to chapter 4. Because in chapter 4, Krishna is saying, this knowledge, it is received in parampara. It's received from a chain of teachers and their disciples, and you must approach a teacher yourself. Some of the most quoted verses, and this comes from the Bhagavad Gita, Tatpiri pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnanidas tattvadarshina. And when you apply this knowledge, you'll be transformed. You will, your life will be transformed such that your life will no longer bear karmic implications or karmic impacts, because you'll be offering everything that you do to Krishna. And so you'll be living a life that is in Krishna, purified by Krishna. And that is the effect of this transcendental knowledge. So, that's the technical side. Here's a little story that Prabhupada tells in this book to illustrate the Brahmana and the Kamala. What is that story? Anyone remember? Chitra, do you want to tell us briefly?
Yeah, about cutting the eye of a needle with an anvil.
Right, yeah, okay. So Narada Muni meets a Kamala. He meets a Brahmana and he meets a Kamala. Anyone else? They both have a question. Yeah, Tony Prabhu?
They both want to know when they're going to meet the Lord again and get liberation or
Right.
go back to Godhead.
Yeah. And so Narada Muni meets Krishna. Krishna says, do you have any news of my devotees? He says, yes, I've had 2 of your devotees, one Brahmana, one Kamala. Did they have any question? Yes, they were asking when they will come back to the spiritual world, when they will be free of their material conditioning. And Krishna says, okay, you can give them the same answer. That Brahmana and that Kamala both were residing under, or they were working, had their place under a big banyan tree with many, many leaves. You see the banyan tree in India, they are very big. They continue to put down roots from their branches and grow out. So even when the trunk, how long does it take a tree trunk to disappear, to die or rot away? Even after hundreds of years, when that trunk may disappear, the roots that have come out from the branches, they become trunks essentially, and that tree just keeps growing out over many, many acres, hectares. And so the Brahmana and the Kamala, they had their places under this banyan tree. Even in Navadvip today, if you go to Paramatala marketplace, it's under a big banyan tree, and the different parts of the market, under this tree, people have their stands and shops, and there's a temple in the middle. It all goes out there under this big banyan tree. So Krishna, he said, you give them both the same answer. As many leaves as there are on the tree, that many lifetimes, they will come back to me. Narada Muni returns to the Brahmana And he gives him the news. Krishna says, and then he leaves him the tree. Brahma said, that's not true, you're fake. Fake news. You're an imposter. You haven't seen Krishna. What are you talking about? I'm so loaded in Vedic knowledge. I know everything from the Vedas. And then Narada Muni told the cobbler, and the cobbler danced in joy. Krishna says that one day I will come back to you after so many lives, but one day it will happen. And he's so happy, and as he's dancing, a big wind blows through, blows all the leaves off the tree, there's just one remaining. And the cobbler, Narada Muni points to that leaf and says, cobbler, you see, this is your last birth in this world. So that's one of the beautiful stories that Prabhupada tells, how this knowledge it needs to be realized in the heart. Not just, it's not just theoretical book knowledge, it's knowledge that needs to change the heart. And that change of heart means an awakening of devotion, of humility, of love. Here's another. Okay. So are you ready to move to the next book? Jay, all right, let's go. Beyond birth and death. 5 chapters, and this is chapters 2 and 8 of the Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 2, we know all the verses. ISKCON devotees most frequently chant verses or quote verses from chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita to make the point that we're not the body, the spirit, soul. We are changing bodies through a cycle of birth and death, like changing clothes day to day. And we've had a child's body and an adult's, a middle-aged body, and we'll have an old-aged body. And in the same way, we'll have another body when this one perishes. And so, Prabhupada's teaching from this chapter and chapter 8, what happens there? What relates to birth and death?
What happens when, whatever state of mind you have at the time of death, that's what you attain.
Yeah.
That's what Krishna explains, that you have to always remember me.
Right, yeah, thank you. Excellent. So in chapter 8, Krishna is teaching Arjuna how to leave this world. In chapter 2, he's explaining the difference between the body and the soul, and the science of reincarnation, the process of reincarnation. Chapter 8, he's teaching Arjuna about the destination of the yogi. And so Hagriva has combined these groups of lectures into one thematic book, Beyond Birth and Death. 5 chapters, so first chapter is based on the Gita, the first chapter based on the second chapter of the Gita, and then the second chapter based on the 8th chapter of the Gita, as is the remaining chapters 2 to 5, based on the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So here's a nice proverb that Prabhupada quotes in his teaching in other places, but it also appears here very relevant to this topic. He says, your sadhana or your practice of spiritual life will be tested at the moment of death. Whatever our consciousness at the moment of death, that will be an indication of our spiritual practice through life. Our spiritual practice through life needs to bring us to that point that we can face death fearlessly, and we can face death without attachment, and we can fix our mind in Krishna and be carried by that to Krishna in the spiritual sky. There's another nice quotation from this book that Prabhupada frequently cites. Prabhupada frequently quotes his spiritual master as saying, don't try to see God, but act in a way that God will want to see you. Guru Maharaj quotes this very often, and it's actually interesting for me when I read these books. I can hear Guru Maharaj's voice because I'm guessing these are the earliest books he had, and so they would have studied these books and then learned how to teach Krishna consciousness to others from these books. So all the same analogies and stories that I've heard other devotees tell. Jai Shri Shri Radha Bodhidhara Ki Jai. Yeah, all the analogies and stories that I've heard growing up from hearing different preachers, you hear them again as you read the books, because this is where the devotees learn them. They didn't have all the Bhagavatam set that we have. They didn't have the Chaitanya Charitamrita set that we have. They had just, even the Bhagavad Gita they didn't have additionally. Just a few small books, and these were there. And so they're studying these books, they're learning from them, they're teaching others about Krishna. And these are the analogies and the stories and the quotations that they tell. And so it's interesting what you read also, to hear the voices of Prabhupada, but you also hear the voices of his disciples as you read. That at least has been my experience, which is very gratifying and satisfying, because you also feel the Parampara, the voice of the Parampara coming through. We go to the third, so it's 4 books that we're discussing. The 4th book is The Perfection of Yoga. I said how at this time yoga was starting to become popular in the West. And this book, it's 8 chapters. They're based on which chapter of the Bhagavad Gita? 6. Yeah, in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes the yoga process. And so these are lectures delivered August, September 1966. And we go on a yoga journey, beginning how Prabhupada's explaining real yoga is not just gymnastics, it's not just for physical health, but it is proper conduct, yama and niyama, so the rules and the regulations of yoga, and how it needs to discipline the mind, and it needs to be focused. So he's saying you focus by meditating on Krishna. And then he talks about the unsuccessful yogi. He says, even if there's failure in this path, don't worry, you will still be successful. Because Arjuna is asking the question, what happens to the unsuccessful yogi? And so Krishna says, Suchidam Shrimatam Gehe Yoga Brashta Vijaya. You may take birth again, but it will be a good birth, and you will continue your yoga practice and carry on from there. And then finally, very famous verse, the culmination of this book, chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita, Yoginam api sarvesham bhagatilam taratmana shradhavan bhajate yogam sabe yuktatabodhata. Of all the yogis, the one who's always abides in me, thinks of me within themselves, is completely dedicated to me, is the best of all, Krishna says. I remember years ago we were in Saratoga Springs. Saratoga Falls?
Saratoga
Springs. And there's a lot of yoga studios in that area, right? So we were there with Guru Maharaj, and he gave a talk in a yoga studio, and he quoted that verse, Yoginam api sarvesham. And I remember at the end, there was a yogi that came to him and asked the Guru Maharaj for the verse, chapter, and text number, because he wanted to read it. further. He had been intrigued by that idea that the best of all yogis is the bhakti yogi. Let's look at some illustrative stories that Prabhupada tells in this in this book. So one is a story of Vishvamitra, a great sage, a great yogi, a king actually, who becomes a yogi and commits to very determined yoga practice, not in devotion, but to get yogic powers. He has a rivalry with another great yogi, Vasishta. And so that inspires his yoga practice. As he becomes more powerful, Indra is worried. This person wants my post. And so he sends an Apsara, Menaka, to distract him. And she's successful. Menaka distracts Vishvamitra from his yoga practice. So Prabhupada tells the story how when we're doing yoga for materialistic purposes, we may be distracted and we lose everything in that. He tells another story of Bali Maharaj and Vamana Dev. Bali Maharaj was a great king. He ruled the entire earth. And Vamana, Krishna, as Vamana came and tricked him and took everything from him. And Bali had promised 3 paces of land. Vamana took the whole world with 2 paces. So he turned to Bali and said, where do I put my 3rd step? And Bali said, on my head. All that I have left is myself, and I offer myself to you. And Prabhupada says, with that surrender, Bali purchased Krishna's heart. And Krishna told him, I can never leave you. I will always stay with you. And so, although materially he appeared to lose everything because of bhakti, he actually won everything. Because he won Krishna's heart, he won Krishna's love. And so, Prabhupada actually talks about that quite a bit. It's surprised me rereading how much Prabhupada emphasized this point. And when you practice bhakti, Krishna will feel obliged to you. And there's in any loving relationship, there's also a sense of commitment and obligation. He says you commit a little bit, and Krishna will feel obliged to you. And he makes that point quite emphatically and consistently in different places. Here's another nice illustration of, there's a lot of text there, but I will unpack it for you, of how to practice this bhakti yoga. So he says you engage all of your senses in Krishna's service. You engage all of your senses in relation to Krishna. And he says, just like the tongue, it wants to eat nice food. He says, that's fine. You offer the food to Krishna and you eat that spiritual food and it will purify you. He says, you offer it before. How do you offer it? He explains. And so I'll read his description of what you should say to offer your food, and then let's see if what comes to your mind. He says, okay, we may prepare nice milk products, vegetables, grains, fruits, and offer Krishna, and then offer them to him praying. Quote, this material body is a lump of ignorance, and the senses are a network of paths leading to death. Of all the senses, the tongue is most voracious and difficult to control. It is difficult to conquer the tongue in this world, therefore Krishna has given us this nice prasadam, spiritual food to conquer the tongue. So let us take this prasadam to our full satisfaction and glorify their lordships, Sri Sri Radha and Krishna, and in love call for the help of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda. It's the favorite song of the devotees. Some of you are looking at your watches here. By the way, When are we going to get to sing that song? Sarira avidya jao jaredriya tarikao jive pere vishaya sagare taravadye jivayati lovoy sadurvati takejata kosita samsare Krishna Varadoya boy, Korimani Jiva Joy, Saprashad Mandilomai, Sera Vita Power, Ha Krishna Guru, Previta Ko, Chaitanya Nitai. Prabhupada here says this is what you should say to offer your food. We generally don't say that prayer to offer, we say that prayer to remember and to feel grateful before we eat. But here, Prabhupada says you can offer with this prayer. As an illustration of Bhakti Yoga, or let us say, the perfection of yoga. When I was 9, I flew from Australia to India, to Delhi, unaccompanied minor on a plane to be enrolled in the Gurukul. And so the senior preacher in Australia at the time, he arranged for lots of prasadam to be packed for me. And then he said to me, "You will eat your way back to Godhead." So don't worry, you will eat your way back to, and he gave me the prasadam that was sent on my way to Vrindavan. Okay, so this is the 4th book, and I know it's a lot of information. Once again, I'm just hoping to pique your interest and curiosity and excitement for these books. 5 chapters, and the corresponding lectures for the Bhagavad Gita are from chapters 4, 6, and 7. We're tracing the journey of the soul who surrenders to Krishna and then is able to reach Krishna or approach Krishna. And so the first chapter, based on chapter 6, and that yoga should lead to consciousness of Krishna and the desire to return to Krishna. And then chapter 2, describing how kind Krishna is. That Krishna comes to this world, and these are the verses that every Hindu knows, right? Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasya taratmadhyam shritadhyam. In any assembly of Indians, if you're speaking on the Gita and you say the verse, that's the verse that everyone knows. Otherwise, Paritranaya sarunam vinashaya chaduskritam dharma samsthapanataya sambhavami yuge yuge. I come to deliver the pious, I come to destroy the demons, I come to establish Dharma. So Krishna explains his purpose in coming to this world and something about himself. Also, if you understand the transcendental nature of my appearance, then you will not take birth again in this material world. Chapter 7 of the Gita, Krishna is revealing his opulences. He says, I pervade this world as the taste of water, the fragrance of the earth, sound in ether, present everywhere, in all things and all beings. And so, chapter 7, he says, know that all opulent and beautiful things in this world, they come from Bhak and spark of my splendor. And so, in this way, this chapter 7 is revealing more detail about Krishna and how the rare souls they cultivate a relationship with Krishna. And at the end of this book, Prabhupada is quoting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he's quoting the Shikshastakam, and how the devotees in love with Krishna and feeling separation from Krishna and wanting to return to Krishna is very, very beautiful. Let's see some examples that Prabhupada gives, famous examples as he's describing God, he says God pervades everywhere, like sunshine pervades everywhere. He's present all throughout the universe. But then he also, there's the sunshine, there is a sun disk or a sun globe. And so Krishna, he is also present as Paramatma. And then beyond the sun globe, at least in Vedic understanding, there is a sun god, there is a personality of Godhead. And so beyond the energy, the all pervasive energy and the localized Paramatma, then there is Krishna, the person with whom you could have a loving relationship. I think that's an interesting, that Prabhupada gives that example of the sun god, even in 1966 in the Lower East Side, because I'm not sure how many people would be able to relate to a sun god. But it is a traditional explanation and an example that is found among the teachers, and so Prabhupada, he gives it as well. He talks about energy as, he says, in our homes we have electricity. The same electricity can power a stove and be hot, or it can power a refrigerator and be cold. So in the same way, Krishna's energy, it manifests as the material nature or as the spiritual nature, depending on how we engage with it, depending on the relationship that we cultivate with it. It's all his energy, sometimes manifesting like this, sometimes manifesting like that. So another beautiful illustration, and then in terms of coming to Krishna, one of the stories he tells is the story of Dhruva Maharaj, and I didn't give the quote, and how Dhruva Maharaj was searching for, he realized after seeing, he was in search of a kingdom greater than his father's, but then on meeting Krishna, on seeing Krishna, his heart transformed, and he says, Prabhupada says, Dhruva says, I was searching for some garbage, I was searching for some broken glass, and now that I have found you, I have found the most valuable diamond. Prabhupada says diamond. Usually we say jewel, but in this book, Prabhupada says diamond. So together, these books, they provide a complete bhakti curriculum. We have an epistemology, an ontology, a practice or a process, and an objective, a goal. What are we aiming for? What are we striving for? And so they are most wonderful as a group, teaching. And I guess the other thing I want to say that among Prabhupada's different works, they are very accessible, or most accessible. Prabhupada's writings can be quite dense, they're very advanced, they're high-level spiritual teachings. And with these books, these simple books, effort has been made to make Prabhupada's teachings accessible as well, but with his own words and his own teachings. Sometimes to be accessible, we may write our own books or use other books to make Krishna consciousness accessible. And here, Hayagriva, he had that service to take Prabhupada's words and then, under Prabhupada's guidance, to create these books in a way that was very accessible. So I will conclude there. Do we have any questions, comments, reflections? What are you taking away from this presentation or discussion today? Yes, please, Jenny.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for this. I feel like back to school jitters. I'm like, let's dive into learning. I was struck when you said you were very surprised at how much Prabhupada focused on this idea that we can kind of like ingratiate Krishna to us in some way by our little effort. We get so much back.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, that struck me when you said that. Then I was like, I guess that kind of could put me in a mood of I'm trying to get something from Krishna, and I only have to do this, and then I can purchase him in some way. Versus I want to to give and serve and love without any expectation. But I would love to hear why that surprised you and what you're thinking about that.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think I was surprised because I found it repeated. And I think it came up in a couple of the books as well. And Prabhupada was using a term, vachasi or vachasi, that I haven't heard devotees use. But he was using it, and somehow I was surprised that I just haven't heard it reflected more widely in the way that he was expressing it. It was something that he was emphasizing, and I thought it was so beautiful. I think for those different reasons. There was a specific term that he was using that I wasn't familiar with, and that surprised me that I wasn't familiar. And now we're going to go back now with your question. We're going to go back and go more deeply into that as well. Of course, we do talk about it, but the way Prabhupada was talking about it somehow was different with a particular term and a phrase. And he told the story of Bali Maharaj to illustrate it. I guess maybe we don't talk about it for the reason that you said, because we want to surrender to be without any motivation at all. I was surprised, and I thought it was very beautiful, and I think those are the reasons why did it catch your attention?
Yeah, I think it's such a beautiful idea, but it almost felt a little like dangerous to focus on because of the potential for someone like myself who's not as advanced to have mixed motivation then in my devotion.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other reflections? Aditya Agarra, Prabhu's.
I'm going to put it in the middle, one of you will take it.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. This is very nice to see this presented like this. We have a reading group that we actually went through all these books when we were trying to complete all we've done most all of Srila Prabhupada's books now, but I hadn't realized or looked at it like this, that these 4 books were specifically from that era. Made me really want to have them as a set available in matchless gifts for people when they come. Very enlightening. Also, how Hayagriva played such an important role. I didn't realize that he had actually put these books together specifically at that time and presented them to Srila Prabhupada, and that is the case, correct? And Prabhupada said yes. So that's also very wonderful to see that. The other thing that kind of stood out for me was just how Srila Prabhupada just gave it as it is. It didn't really beat around the bush. It's like, I came all this way, I'm going to give it to you. It's like, I don't know if I have time to, build a bridge, as we say sometimes these days. And Prabhupada, and it's amazing, like you said, and there's a sun god.
Right.
And so you can almost picture going back to 1966 and matchless gifts, that everyone went, yeah, of course there is. Like, not sarcastically, but yeah, of course. And why wouldn't there be, kind of thing. So Prabhupada and I think often I remember hearing Malati Prabhu speak about how it was just like, because Prabhupada spoke with such, I think you quoted Satsvarup Maharaj at the beginning, with such deep scholarship, realization, and devotion, that when he said something, you just kind of went, yeah, of course. And I think, remembering my own experience when I first read, I think Path of Perfection was one of the first books that I got. And as I was reading it, just thinking, how does this person know everything that I've been thinking that I can't even remember when I was thinking it, but I know that, and I've heard that before, but I don't remember where. And how does he know? It was like this kind of weird, enigmatic experience of remembering something that you've forgotten rather than reading something new. Yeah, it was really, really profound. So thank you for bringing this up, and I will definitely try to see if we can figure out how to get off for it. It's nice with the old covers. Those are the original covers. When you pulled them out, it was like, ooh, yeah. And they look pristine. I don't know where your books have went, but there's a black bag over there you can put them in if you don't have somewhere else. So I love collecting these kind of things. So it's beautiful. Thank you for this. Very, very wonderful, Sri Prahlad.
Yes, thank you very much for a wonderful class, beautifully structured and really, really nice. These 4 books, I was brought up in these 4 books. Yeah, you know, in my devotional life. So, I was also struck by you talking about Hayagriva and having actual objective, that they weren't just, you know, compilation books or whatever. And it made me think of something Satyaraj Prabhu told me. When Satyaraj Prabhu was visiting Hayagriva in the hospital, he was on his deathbed in the 80s. And because I was also, like Jayantai said, it's such an important thing that he did here, you know, and he was so instrumental in it. So when Satyaraj was visiting Hayagriva Prabhu, Hayagriva told him, he said, I feel like I've been touched by the hand of God.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's like really heavy, you know. And he did this for us, you know. So, so it's just giving us that perspective is just wonderful. So thank you again. And last little comment is, my favorite book was always On the Way to Krishna. That really resonated with me.
Right.
And when I was working in the theater, there was a 15-year-old intern. This girl was working there, and she saw me chanting, and she was asking me questions about it. And I gave her that book. And because of that book, she got more interested in Krishna consciousness, became a devotee for a while. But she was 15 years old, and her parents were concerned. So her mother read the book, and her mother investigated Krishna consciousness, and I ended up marrying her mother.
Oh,
All the way to Yaduna.
So that book looms large in my
in your
life.
family, yeah. Great story. Anyone else have a story to share with these books? Or a comment or a question? Yeah.
Thanks for explaining these books so nicely. Once while I was doing book distribution, like you said, Bali Maharaj was tricked by Vamanadev. There was this man. He was like giving examples on how Krishna was like a trickster. He said, "Yada nasya glanir bhavati bharata." The Lord appears to reestablish dharma. But he said that, so he told Bhima to tell Drona kill Ashwatthama. Yeah, Ashwatthama is dead. But so then, like, he was doing trickery then. So how can you stay with that religion where the God is trickster? Should you answer that question or just ignore it?
Okay, yeah, good question. Thank you. It's a question from experience. Sharing Krishna consciousness on the street. You answer the question or not? When somebody asks with humility, we try to respond. It seems you had a doubt if that person was actually asking the question seriously or earnestly, or if they were just trying to create some doubt in your mind. So that's a good point. That is a good concern to have. When somebody asks sincerely, then you can have proper dialogue. If somebody's asking just to confront or to agitate your mind, it's not sincere. Then yeah, if you don't feel like engaging, you don't have to. There's no obligation there. Krishna says in the Gita, of conversations I am Vad, or of discussions I am Vad. Vad means the two sides are looking for truth. There is a sincerity of heart on both sides. But if it's just about trying to defeat another person or establish your superiority over another person, or so Vitanga means you're trying to defeat or smash somebody, Chala means you're trying to trick somebody with rhetorical devices. Krishna also doesn't appreciate that type of conversation. So if you feel there's an opening there, somebody's asking that question, particularly with some sincerity, definitely you want to respond. If you feel it's just about provoking and agitating, then you might just smile and fold your hands. And
How would you respond?
how would I respond? Okay. Yeah, so Krishna, he's the supreme everything. Krishna is also the supreme trickster. He's very playful as well. He has many playful pastimes. So Krishna is the supreme dancer, he's the best friend, he's the best well-wisher, and he can be a trickster. It's one of his qualities, one of his types of pastimes. Don't deny that to Krishna either. He is the supreme in everything, including it being a trickster. In this case, in that specific example that you're giving, then yeah, he had his reasons, and it was for a higher purpose. So sometimes for a higher purpose, you might also use some particular means. He was wanting to protect his devotees, and to establish Dharma, and to destroy Adharma. And so for that higher purpose, then he's using some trickery in that instance. And that's also acceptable. Yep. Thank you for your question.
Thank you so much.
So, what's your name?
Ananta Vijay.
Anantavya?
Ananta Vijay.
Ananta Vijay. Okay, yeah, you'll be victorious in your Krishna consciousness.
His Grace Sri Prahlad Prabhu Ki Jai!
Jai!
So we will now have Kirtan and Arti, so if you could please help us just clear the cushions and fold the chairs, and we'll be back with some announcements afterwards. And we have maybe 2 or 3 strong devotees who'd like to help bring prasadam down. Please meet Rajalakshmi in the back of the temple room. Thank you so much.
Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Shri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Prabhupada. Asto Saraswati Shri Shri Varadai Sardar Vrinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada ki. Shri Rup Shri Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dasa Raghunath and Goswami Prabhupada ki. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radhakud Giri Govardhan ki. Raga Devi ki. Yamuna Devi ki. Bhakti Devi ki. Tulsi Maharani ki. Harinam Sankirtan ki. Jai Pradavani Bhav ki. Rajabhumi Shri Vrindavan ki. Shri Shri Radha Govardhan ki. Jai Gaur Premanandi. Glory to the Samudavati. Glory to the Samudavati. Glory to the Samudavati. Glory to Glory to Shri Shri Vrindavan.
Namaste, Namaste, Namaste.
And more Prahlad.
Thank you so much. That was such a wonderful Trinity prayers. I really felt like he was here. That was amazing. Thank you, everyone. So we have a lot of really exciting festivals coming up at Bhakti Center. We are entering. It's kind of always festival season here, but we are continuing to go deeper into festival season for the summer. So the first one that will come up is Julan Yatra. This is very beautiful. It's very special at Bhakti Center. We go up onto the roof, and you'll have the opportunity to actually swing their lordships and really participate in this pastime. So that is not a photo that I want to see. That is going to be on August 4th to 8th. So that will be Monday through Thursday. Monday through Wednesday will be 7 p.m. to 7:45. And then Thursday and Friday will be 7:15 to 8 p.m. So don't miss that. It's a very sweet festival with everyone at Bhakti Center. The next festival comes up on August 8th. So to end that week on Friday, that will be Balaram Jayanti. So that will start at 5:45 and go on with Harinam, Gora Arti. We will have Julan Yatra that night as well, Kirtan, and then Prashadam. So it will start at 5:45 and 9 p.m. and on will be Prashadam. And then, not finally, but finally for this announcement, we have Janmashtami coming up on August 16th. That will start at 6:30 and will go obviously to midnight and beyond for a very special celebration. There are so many more festivals coming up. We have Srila Prabhupada's Disappearance Day. Appearance, thank you. Let's not rush it. Appearance Day coming up, and many others afterwards. And what we found at Bhakti Center, these festivals are so sweet, and it's such an opportunity for our community to come together. And what makes them the most successful and kind of like ecstatic experience for everyone is when we all participate in whatever way that we're called to do so. So we need people for everything from setting up, to cleaning up, to cooking, to serving out, to go on Harinam, whatever it might be, to leading kirtans. There's an opportunity for everyone to serve in their own capacity as they're called to do. So on Bhakti Center websites, you'll see beautiful informational pages about each one of these festivals. And there'll be a button that says sign up to volunteer. And you can see all of the different time slots and sevas that are available. In addition, if you are maybe a little bit short on time, you might happen to be out of town during that weekend, there's also an opportunity to monetarily support these festivals going on, which are really a gift to the whole community and to New York City. So we encourage you to participate in whatever way feels most aligned and most inspiring to you. Finally, we will have Prashadam in the back. Today is Ekadasi. Everything will be beautiful and ready for your fast. And this is a community-led program. We will have an opportunity if you'd like to, if you're called to donate. Jai Shri Prahlad. If you would like to donate, there will be a way to do so in the back, and we encourage that. Thank you all so much for coming and spending your Sunday with us, and we'll see you next week. Hare Krishna.